G'day everyone, welcome to Get Lost with a Travel Guide with your host Ben, where we talk all things travel, tourism, adventure, and of course some wild journeys. Now this gentleman is called Anthony Preston. Now he's what I would like to call that guy. You know when you watch a TV show or a movie and you see the same actor in the multiple different programs? He's that guy. Oh, I've seen him in the thing. Well, he's just in a new thing now, which is featuring on Netflix. It's dropping really soon, and he is a host on a reality TV show called Too Hot to Handle. Can't wait for this episode. Really hope you enjoy it. Here he is once again. We've got the technicalities sorted, and we are recording. Mr. Preston, how are you, buddy? Again.
Mr. Walters, how are you? Alas, we've been trying to do this particular interview
for how long?
And it's, well, probably since you first asked me, and since I first shot Too Hot to Handle probably a year ago, and I said, hey, what would be really dope is if we do this podcast right around the time that comes out. And then we finally agreed to it, and literally Netflix contacted me a couple of days later, right after you and I did, and said we were going to do the podcast, and said, all right, you're up July 14th. And I'm like, so all we had to do is book the podcast. That's what was holding everything.
I know, I've been busy, you've been busy, you've been more busy, but finally, we're here, we're ready to rock this shit. But firstly, can we unpack it precisely how we know each other? Can you tell the story?
I was on an amazing trip. I think it was, what was it? 30 cities, 13 countries in 30 days with Expat Explorer. And I had the privilege of having several great tour guides, one of which was yours truly, the one, the only, the Benny Walters. And I was just thinking about that the other day as I was going through some photos or made a post, or somebody was talking about a trip they took. And I said, I probably had the best time, and not just because it was a complete accident. I was supposed to be on a totally different tour, booked the wrong one, ended up with like a bunch of like college kids. You were the tour guide. And I was like, oh my God, what did I just do? But then fast forward 3 weeks in, I'm like, this is the best tour I've ever been on in my life.
Man.
It was so much fun, dude. We had people coming, people going. We were dropping people off in Rome, picking up new people. It was great, man. That was 2000. So we met let's see. I'm trying to think when we actually met you. Would have been in Dover in August of 2014.
Good memory. Yeah, like for me, like because I've done so many tours around Europe, it's all blurred together. But I do remember what you said. You said you booked the wrong tour, because I remember on that particular concept, most of the tours would have single beds. Like so, a lot of couples would book that, and you booked the bloody wrong one by accident, and you turned up, and I knew, it was like, oh shit, like because you're meant to have boys in one room, girls in the other, 4 to 6, sometimes 8 people, and I think you're on your honeymoon or something like that. You were there with your beautiful partner, and I'm just like, okay, I got to break the news to you as kindly, as delicately as I can, and you're like, holy shit, like we can't. I remember that moment, and I thought this could go really bad, and you're like, well, it is what it is. And you made the most of it. And I do remember, I think there was some times I said, if there was ever a possibility, I got a surplus of rooms, I'll try to help you out. And maybe that happened once or twice. Maybe.
Yeah, I remember you guys were highly accommodating at the time. But it was, that whole thing was just hilarious the way it all worked out. But we ended up having the best time.
Yeah. So what do you remember? What do you remember on the tour? What was some standouts?
Oh gosh, man, what were some everything we did. There were so many great things. I remember that Josh Groban song every single morning. Wake up, wake up. Like you don't remember that song? You were on that tour longer than I was.
Yeah. That was a toilet song, and I remember. I think on that tour was In Excess, New Sensation, New Sensation.
There was a lot of that. Then there was like. Somehow you got a hold of one of my songs and pumped it through like the bus. Like we did that whole trip was just hysterical.
It's wild, man. Yeah, it's a wild journey.
Man, everything was awesome. Like Switzerland was I'm trying to remember like the order of like countries, like Pontegard through Spain, Barcelona, back through Amalfi Coast to Monte Carlo to Nice, up through let's see, Italy, Swiss Alps, like Liechtenstein was funny. Just the stories about Liechtenstein. The idea that there's like one little castle on a hill and like the town below it. It's all about, that
Yeah,
big.
yeah.
That whole thing was just hysterical. And that they
I
still have
love
royalty there.
I love hearing the feedback. What it's like to tour with me years later. But you had a
No,
great
it was just
time.
no. Your energy was great. Everybody's great. I still keep in touch with Percy. Is that his name, Percy?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yep,
Yeah, yeah.
yep.
All the guys on that. What?
Yeah.
Yeah, dude. Watching you guys like put that bus anywhere was like, oh, when we went through the archway into, like, this is ridiculous, but this is kind of stuff you remember. Watching how you guys thread the needle into, I guess it's around the Louvre, where you have to go through that one archway through the bus without knocking the mirrors off and everything.
Yep,
That was
yep,
just,
yep.
just the skill you guys had to have.
Oh
I also
man.
remember like the rules, you could only drive so many hours a day and things like that with the company and whatnot.
Yeah.
But yeah, dude, the whole thing was just incredible, just an incredible experience.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think if there's any standout moments. It was all awesome. I mean, Berlin was awesome, Salzburg. I
But that's
really liked.
touring, like it's fucking wild. Like it's not a
But
holiday.
when I tell people about it, they, oh my God, it sounds like so much work and it's exhausting. Like, you don't understand. It was just so much fun. Like, I don't know what else to say about it. It was just so much fun. It went by so fast. We were together for, I mean, you bond with people like that when you're together in a bus for
Yeah.
6 weeks or whatever.
You
5
become
weeks.
bloody family. You become
Yeah.
family members. You see each other hungover, the best, the worst, and you're having an incredible time in the most spectacular places on the planet. You're like, that's why I decided to do it for a job. Like you do it all the time. It's so nuts.
No, I
Yeah, I
remember
love
thinking
it.
this guy has figured out life. He gets to do what he loves. He gets paid for it. And then you move the whole operation to Australia, which I thought was incredible. So I've
Well,
learned a ton about Australia just by watching your posts.
yeah, like well, that's the thing. Like, yeah, like one thing I started guiding around was to do mature people. Because as you know, we kind of partied hard almost every night and backed it up the next day. And that's exhausting. So, but yeah, like everyone's in bed by about 9 o'clock with the tours I do now. So, and I get a bit more home time. So I'm trying to think how to do this more long term and sustainably is how I've been doing
Yeah.
that. So somehow I'm still touring. I'm looking at my schedule and I've got a whole bunch of tours on. And yeah, last one I did was in May. Yeah, I had 39 Americans. How about that?
Nice.
But yeah,
Well, it's
let's have a chat, mate. Let's chat about you. But thank you for unpacking your memories. And you're right. It's the bond will it's going to be forever. It just accept it. This is going to continue.
I have. I'm just disappointed it's taken us so long to do this.
Yeah, but mate, your career, your journey, I would say you figured life out because
Oh gosh.
every time I'm looking at your Instagram, it's growing. And like, what movie have you done now? What television show have you done now? What character have you portrayed? And I'm like, that's why I said to you prior to the podcast, I'm like, is there your resume? You just, YouTube. And I was like, okay, let's do YouTube. Scene of all this different stuff. I'm like, oh, okay. I think one of your most famous is Days of Our Lives.
I just had wrapped that up right when so it's a daytime television series, it's a soap opera. And that happened, the last run event that I did, last time I worked on that show was, I guess, right before we met. And then like most things, once you're in a certain like demographic or sect of the industry that kind of move you around, I did go back for something small on another soap called Young and the Restless a few years later. But yeah, Days was the kind of the biggest one I think I've done. There was actually another one of the other reality shows that I did was on the set of another soap called General Hospital. We have something here called Soap Net, and it's where they air all the soap operas. But they had done this reality series where they were bringing in sort of a cast of young aspiring soap actors, and we got to mentor them, and it was actually kind of fun. But they did that on the set of a show called General Hospital, which would be that's the television network of ABC, which was where we did that. But yeah, soaps is where it all started. But yeah, that was always really good to me. I worked in commercially after that. Had a brief stint in print work, but
How
It
did you get
really
your foot in the
wasn't
door?
my passion,
You know,
but I got into features after that.
how did you get started or get your foot in the door? Like the
Dude,
only acting I know of is watching Joey on Friends and how he went about it. But what's the reality?
yeah. And funny enough, what was the soap opera he was on? It was
Hey,
Real
you're
Life.
Joey. You're the real life
Exactly.
Joey. They based it on you.
How you doing? So how did I get started? Well, purely by accident. I had no aspiration. So I was going to be an athlete, but I knew I wanted to after. So I'm from the Midwest part of the United States, and I knew I wanted to do something out of state for college. And I definitely wanted to go somewhere by a beach. I did explore New York, but didn't get into the school there that I wanted to get into, which is really ironic because right after I came to Los Angeles, the first show I worked on shipped me off to New York to work, which was hysterical. But this was a complete accident. I had come to Los Angeles to do a business minor, kind of a marketing degree, and explore the possibility of broadcast journalism. Thought I'd like to maybe direct film someday. But the humanities department was giving extra credit for anybody who tried out for the school play. And I was trying to figure out how I could skip school so that I could go surf because I was 30 minutes from Malibu, California, where I was going to school. Less than that, actually, maybe 20 minutes. So I try out for this play and I get in it. I'm like, whatever, I'll do it. I had nothing else going on. And so I didn't realize it though, but that particular year, we had something called ACTF. That's the American College Theater Festival. They happen to do two things that year. Number one, they came through our school to adjudicate our productions. And secondly, they invited the play that I was in, they invited it to compete at ACTF. And that year I won, again, none of this was planned. That year I won Best Dramatic Performance for this play called Mr. Bundy. And an agent came out of that, and then the soap started after that. And that was it. I mean, you're talking like back when you could get off at the international terminal at LAX and they were handing out, we used to joke and say they were handing out TV pilots at the airport at that time because it was just so much work.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's initially how I got started. Days happened a few years later. And then the Lifetime, really, I'd say that kind of like the spike or resurgence was when I started transitioning from daytime into Hallmark and A&E and Lifetime. And started doing the features for them. And then, yeah, just snowball effect, just better and better work after that. I've been privileged to do a lot of great stuff. But then again, I also worked on a not Wes Anderson, what's the other guy's name? Wes Craven movie called the one that launched Rachel McAdams
He's
was already
the
gone.
horror guy, isn't he? And he made like Scream or Freddy Krueger, Nightmare on Elm Street. Is that
he
Wes
was
Craven?
involved, but he did this movie called Red Eye. And it starred Rachel McAdams, and it was one of Cillian Murphy's first movies. And I had this real quick moment or scene with her when she gets off of this airplane. It's basically a horror movie that takes place on an airplane. But when she's getting off, she stops she's in the Tom Bradley International Terminal. She stops by me to get a coffee real quick. They cut it out of the film. And when you see the film, you just see me moving around in the background afterward. But that whole experience was amazing. It's like, so my career's been like, the star of like a really tiny film or a really little guy on a huge film. So
Yeah.
I've had like a nice humbling trajectory as far as my journey has gone.
That's been the most I've always thought like Young and the Restless, it's a very lovely type show. Have you ever had to make out or do something romantic with another actor on the screen?
It's really funny. I joke about this all the time. For my category, if you will, and as an actor, you would think probably a lot more. I can't tell you how many soap sets or romantic movies, if you will, with those basic Hallmark story beats and arcs, storylines that I've had that have not ever. I'm more scared of that probably than anything else. It's terrifying. It is one of the most intimacy with a person that you don't have a normal relationship with. It's one of the most. It's the most awkward. People think it's really the most difficult. I'm petrified of it. It's terrifying. I had a buddy of mine say. He said one of the funniest things one time. His name is Sean Ashmore. You know him from all the. You know him from Smallville and also from. He was Iceman and all the X-Men movies. He was doing this movie called The Ruins one time, and we're having this conversation, and I'm like, dude, I don't mind monologues. I don't mind, stuff where you have to, you're like the bad guy and you got to do this deep psychological dig into creating the authenticity of that character and whatnot. But I tell you, man, if you to have something romantic with a co-star, it's frightening. He goes, I think I might have landed on something that really helps me and relaxes my co-star, because it's awkward for them too. I said, what'd you say? He goes, well, I had this incredibly beautiful girl that I had this bedroom scene with. And he goes, and I just want to break the ice and make her feel comfortable. And he goes, so this is what I said. He goes, listen, he goes, I know we're all professional here. So if I get excited, don't be offended. If I don't get excited, don't be offended. So that was Sean's advice to me. But no, I'm trying to think, man. Days I might have had one. It was supposed to be, the storyline was a frat party. And I think I might have had to kiss somebody in a prolonged fashion. Everything else has been a lips on the cheek or something like that. I've never really had, let's put it this way. So far, most of my career has remained horizontal. I'm like Morgan Freeman. Like, I think they did a study of the number of films he's done. I think he's had exactly one romantic kiss his entire career.
He's looked like the age of 55 for 30 years.
Forever.
How does he do that?
I don't know, but I want to find out. Let's put it that way. Maybe it's because he doesn't do any romance scenes. I have no idea. But no, I so far so good, man. Nothing has come down the pipe that's been. It's funny. I've been cast in roles where that was going to happen, and then at the last minute, the producer or director was like, you know what, you might be, you have this ability to do X, Y, Z, so therefore you'd be more suited for this role in the film, which is all flattering. But then at the same time, now I don't have to even deal. I remember I was going to be the lead in this movie, and then they found this other actor who's now on The Wheel of Time, which is that big Amazon series. But he was, for lack of a better term, just more, I don't know what. They just liked his quality for the lead more. And they said, but you can play, upbeat and the hero, but this other actor can't play the dark kind of menacing antagonist. So we still want you in the film. We love your work. We're going to put you over here because you can do it. And then that helped me avert that whole situation. So it just worked out that way. It was hilarious.
Well, tell us, because I every podcast I try to do as much homework as I could, and you sent me your YouTube link, and then this morning I woke up, had a bloody crazy, and then you go, hey man, check this out, I'm on Netflix. I'm like, what? So tell me about this show. It's some reality TV show. It looks like a giant orgy on a boat. What's it called?
Well, that's what's okay. So that's what's so interesting about this show. So a couple of things. First of all, this kind of dovetails back into our relationship, because we've literally been talking about doing this podcast for probably 18 months.
Yeah.
But I think we're going to do it. Let's do it when everything. I've had some great work come out this year, but this is unique. And because this is, like, for lack of a better term, one of the bigger ones. Like this, we were talking a second ago about, so the show is Too Hot to Handle. It has almost 700,000 followers on Instagram. The viewership is through the roof. When it goes live July 14th on Netflix, that carousel where it says top 10 shows in the nation, it will sit there for 4 to 6 weeks in the top 10. It's just a massively popular show. It's one of their biggest shows of all time. And so I'm hosting the first part of season 5, because basically once the reveal happens, then the show just organically goes off on its own. Now here's the show. So to your point, it looks like a giant orgy on a boat. So let's talk about the history of this show. It's been shot in only 2 places ever. I can tell you some funny stories about while we were shooting it. So it's only shot in Mexico, I believe Cancun, and then the second location was the British Isles, which is Turks and Caicos. So I think it was only season 2 was shot in Mexico. Season 3 and 4 were all shot in Turks. Well, here's the background of the show. It is a dating show per se, but they strategically combed the internet looking for, I kid you not, the most shallow, narcissistic, and non-contributing zeros on the internet with a following and with abs. This is the setup. They sell them all on this idea. So they've done Love Island. I think one was called Love Island. Yeah. One was called Love in Paradise. My show is called Love Overboard, obviously. And then they had another faux show. So they invite all these people to this show. At the end of one of the episodes, they do this big reveal where this little robot, this little like Alexa looking thing called Lana, comes out and says, "You've been selected because of your superficial nature, the way you approach relationships. You are not too hot to handle. Starting now begins the no sex mandate, so you can learn how to interact and relate emotionally to your partner on a deeper, soulish level." And they all go, "Ah!" So they find out they're on this show. The twist is that they have all this prize money, right? But there's usually 6 to 8 contestants. I guess there's 8 to 10, because throughout the show, they'll bring in other people just to mess with the whole, everybody will start to have, connection, relationship, and emotions. And then just about where you feel like people have sort of settled into something, they'll bring in some new hot people just to jack with everything. It's awesome. But the point is, they take them through all these workshops, and they have to do all this. I'm not kidding you, like relationship therapists. They have the girl, they split the genders up. The girls go off with somebody to find out, how they were, how they interacted with men in the past and what their soulish wounds are. The men go off to find out why they're so, why they objectify women all the time. I mean, it starts out like they hype it up like it's this big, like, wet, wild summer. And then they pull the rug out of everybody, including the audience. Oh. And then they say, now, because you all suck, now we're going to learn how to be better to each other, so that when you leave.
Were you aware of this as the host? Like, you knew this was going to happen?
This is what's hilarious. I stumbled upon the show like every other viewer, and it was just, I don't know why. What was during the pandemic? I had never heard of it before. It sat there, like I said, in the carousel. I had to scroll by it every single time I wanted to watch something during the pandemic. And I was like, finally, like, okay, what is the deal? Why is this always here? So I turned it on, and about 20 minutes into the show, I'm like, this is the stupidest thing I've ever seen. Well, then at the end, where Lana comes out and blows the lid off of everything and tells them what they're going to be doing, I went, oh my God, dude, this is freaking genius. So then I was like, well, I'll watch one other episode. Well, maybe I'll watch one. And then before I knew it, I'd finished the first season. Well, so right about the first, maybe like, I want to say 3 months later, it was, I just remember it was the beginning of the year. And my agent calls and says, it's 6 a.m. on a Saturday. And I'm like, what is the deal? And she hits me up. She goes, I just got a call from production. They're interested in meeting with you today about this role. I said, well, what is it? We can't tell you. I said, why not? I said, because they can't tell us. I was like, well, that sounds kind of sketchy. So anyway, I go through a battery of questionnaires, meet with several producers, had to sign an NDA, non-disclosure agreement, to not talk about the show. And I finally said, that's fine, but what is it, right? Well, we can't tell you unless we know you're going to be part of it, because a lot of the copy that I was reading, a lot of the audition material was consistent with what the season was going to be. So I wasn't allowed to talk about anything. Well, then finally they're like, hey, they made me my offer. And then they said, you're going to host season 5 of Too Hot to Handle. I was like, sweet. And are you familiar with the show? I said, absolutely. They said, do you know what we've done with the hosts before? I said, yeah, so season 4 had Mario Lopez as their host the first couple episodes. Now, what happens is he kind of builds a rapport with the cast, and he, guides them around. He explains things, tells them kind of basically what they're going to be doing in the faux show. But more or less, once the reveal is done, then the show takes this whole other turn, and then the hosts might periodically pop in and out, but for the most part, they don't, because their job is essentially done. Well, on this one, they said, listen, and this kind of goes back to tourism also, where during the pandemic, 2 things happened to the islands of Turks and Caicos. A lot of celebrities went there, and they bought up tons of property because it's dirt cheap, but it's some of the most gorgeous coastline you've ever seen in your life. Secondarily, that show, because of its popularity, their whole economy there is tourism, and I'm sure you know much about that. So they, with all of when the pandemic hit, that show kept people aware of that region, all of the beautiful photos of the water and everything. Tourists, when everything was closed here in the States, they all flocked to Turks and Caicos. So their economy just went through the roof. So anyway, they said, listen, people are extremely familiar with this show because it's one of the only places we shoot now. And I'm not kidding you. I'm standing, if you saw the trailer that I sent you, the twist this year is because they've done everything at this villa, or specifically on Grand Turk in the islands. They're like, we need to do something different. We need to do 2 things different this year. let's get the show out into the ocean. And then instead of having a host, we need to hire somebody that's going to basically act as if they're part of this whole agenda. So although I quote unquote hosted the show, really what I was doing was I was acting like this yacht captain that was taking these hot and just hormonally driven people.
It was sort of like the tour guide
all over the Caribbean.
in a way. It's sort of
like a tour guide.
Kind of, yeah.
And luckily in 2014, I had 6 weeks of experience of that.
I've seen on that Netflix advertisement that you sent me, it's like got you going, what happens in international water stays in
That is my tagline. I come out on the deck and I talk about all the people that moved there, like Drake and Rihanna. And I basically said, look, this is going to be the trip of a lifetime. So basically what we sold them on was this show called Love Overboard. They think they're on a show called Love Overboard, where I am going to just take them, just like you said, as their tour guide, all over to these different islands in the Caribbean where they're all just going to shack up for the next 6 weeks. Well, after about 2 days of doing this, I say, hey, I want to take you guys to a beach party that I've set up on this island. So we get off. They have huge pyrotechnics and fireworks. There's Brazilian dancers. There's tiki torches and this whole spread and Mai Tais and all kinds of stuff. I mean, it's awesome. And that's when I break the news to them that they're not going to be able to hook up at all. And then the way the show works is they have a pot usually of $100,000 to $200,000. And Lana sets the rules. And if anybody breaks them, they all start losing prize money. So what's really interesting is because it's everybody's money. Imagine like we're on a show together or something. And I don't know, I got like a college fund I'm trying to pay back and I have a chance to do that. But Benny's out there shacking up with all the chicks. And every time he does, I lose like 10 grand. Like it creates this really crazy accountability among people. People start forming these alliances, taking sides, and then actual authentic relationships are birthed out of it. So it's the crazy, zany, goofy, narcissistic show. And then it's incredibly endearing at the same time. So I just happened to be, because of the pandemic, familiar with the brand before I got there. But I got to tell you, it was one of my favorite jobs. It was so much fun. The cast was great. Production was incredible. The network takes incredibly good care of us. So it was a lot of fun.
Maybe it makes sense. Maybe that could, you being a TV show host. I mean, based on what we spoke about, I've already analysed that you're bloody articulate. You're easy to talk to. You're a fantastic listener. You're bloody gorgeous on the eyes. I mean, wow, look at you. I mean, just want to kiss you. But and you're bloody likable. So maybe, is that something else possible in the future? You could be hosting more TV shows.
See, here's the thing with daytime television, going back to what I said. So once I did my first time, so I've been on Young and the Restless twice, several years in between. But once you sort of get into a vein with that type of work, they're comfortable with you and they bring you back.
Sort of typecast, like you've already got that on your resume, so you can repeat it.
It isn't typecast. It's like you can play different characters on these shows, but as far as like a soap background and look at what the network knows you're comfortable with and can do, it's just one of those things that happens to. I mean, I got several friends that were on General Hospital that are on Days of Our Lives. They were on Young and the Restless before that. Now they're on Days. Like they move around a lot, and so I say that to say that there's been some rumblings that after this airs, that there might be, if not other opportunities to host shows like this, to actually be a contestant on one. So who knows? I have no idea.
If I had a magic wand and I could sprinkle fairy dust on the next 5 years of your life, and you're like, being realistic, you think, what would you like to do?
Oh gosh, if we're going that route, we've talked about reality TV, but my real passion, dude, I would anything that J.J. Abrams or Robert Zemeckis or Chris Nolan are doing, any of those movies. I would love to work with Rian Johnson or even
now let's break it down. Not everyone's a movie buff. That Robert, I think he did Back to the Future. Is it that guy?
Robert Zemeckis. Yeah, Robert Zemeckis is Back to the Future. He's done some brilliant films as of late. Chris Nolan did Memento. He's doing Oppenheimer. He did Interstellar. He's done J.J. Abrams did all the Chris Pine Star Trek
So you want to
movies.
go into films? You want to go into
Oh
movies?
gosh, yes, I miss him. I miss him tremendously. I really want to sink my teeth into just a really meaty role. I've done the soap thing, if you will, in A&E and Hallmark, and these have all been wonderful things that have humbled me so much because they've been such a blessing to me. But as an artist, though, I want to move into some things that really not that those roles don't challenge me, but just in a different way. I don't know, play a dad who's got a daughter who's run away from home, or like this Jim Caviezel movie that's out now, you know, where he's dealing with some big, heavy, culturally topographical issues. You know, just something that really, as an artist, we can put up there and be like, you know, that was something that really stretched me performance-wise, work-wise, and I had to really dig deep to bring that character authentically to life. Something like that. I love doing action movie. I mean, who doesn't want to do a DC movie or work with James Gunn in the MCU or now in DC? I always want to do either. I always thought it would be really, really fun to play either a. I mean, there's 10. The probability of this is so high now because there's 10,000 versions of them now. But like one of the I don't know, be part of one of the Batman storylines or something like that. But something action would be fun.
How do you do it? How do you even get in contact with these people to throw your hat in the ring to make that a possibility?
You have to have a lot of tenacity, a lot of good tape and credits, and then you just got to balls. you got to have a good team that's really going to lobby for you. And I'm fortunate to have a really good one behind me. That's why, I mean, I would be remiss to say that. I mean, it's a lot of my hard work, but I mean, I'm good people. My agent has worked extremely hard over the years to get me a lot of these opportunities. So I mean, it's a collaborative effort, man.
So it's really clicky. It's sort of like networking seems to be very key. Just to be able to get that opportunity, to be able to get the meeting to see if it's possible.
Yeah, I mean that's a critical part of it. I mean, it is called show business. You really have to know. And lucky for me, I had a marketing background, but you know, there's so much talent in this world that this world will never see because people don't know how to present it. And I'd say that it's a lot of luck, but it's also just a lot of like, you know, you have to actually strategically figure out who you know. That was one of the things that impressed me about you when we were overseas. I was like, this guy can talk to anybody. When I watched you do it, like, because think about that. You had the privilege of being around all different types of life from all different parts of the planet for weeks on end and got exposed to so much, knew your history back. And I mean, you could probably like lay there in bed at night and the narrative that you spoke about everything from Dover to I don't know to Amsterdam, you could probably just recite without even like every place, every date.
Yeah, it's a combination of things of doing your homework. You got to do your homework. There's no two ways about it. You got to be interested. You got to know your homework. And also, I did this training course with a competitor to a company in Bangkok. And part of that was just to see how you can freestyle talking shit, kind of like almost a podcast. Like, I don't know what I'm going to say next. I've prepared some stuff, but we're now just in the moment, just literally discussing something I had no idea prepared for. And they challenged me. They said, Ben, you got to talk to it was all full of tour guides, like a training thing. You got to give me a 10-minute speech on conveyor belts. They thought of the most boring topics to talk about and handed them out randomly and go, prepare 10 minutes on conveyor belts. I'm like, fuck, I'm going to, all right. So I'm writing, and I don't know. I've got to 10 minutes. It was pure dribble, but it had that, like, you got to just go, I don't know. You can't be stuck in that. I don't know. You produce something. And that's what it was. So we go, hey, Ben, what's that old church over there that's 1,000 years old? You know, never seen it before, but something will come out your mouth. Right. And that's what it's for. It prepares you for that uncomfortable moment just to be able to speak something.
So everything I know about World War II and Eastern Europe, for all intents and purposes, given a night on the town the night before with you, I may have to go like re-examine what I think is fact.
Well, I do say that in nowadays because everyone's got a smartphone, and I'd say I'm a tour group. So who's Googled Australia before? No one. All right, so I can make up stuff. Beautiful, but you're right. Like if you're not careful, what I say, I talk shit, but it's as factual as it possibly can be because people will Google stuff what you say, and if it's bullshit, well, you look like a bloody fool, and you get found out really quick with reviews, and you don't last. So, but that's how you're right. that
Well,
is
I think.
that is a part of that.
Well, I mean, you got to represent. You're representing international issues with regard to the legalities of people's passports. You have, I mean, the number of borders and countries we went into,
Yeah.
people's money and transactions of that sense.
Well,
You're
what you're talking
responsible
about
for all those lives,
yeah.
and then on top of that, you got to like be up before everybody else, be on point, be watching your watch. I was impressed with you, man, because that and to enjoy it. I don't ever remember you being anything but about everything. Tiziana, I just remembered you asked me before, like, what do you remember about the trip? Ciao, Tiziana.
Oh, that's right. I felt really bad about that. So for those who's listening, we got a local.
Why? She was so excited.
Yeah,
I mean,
her name's Tiziana, but she's got she's got tits in her name, and yeah, she knew the English translation, and I got behind her, and I said, hey, if we get our local guide excited, she'll give us a better tour, and the energy will go around. We should have a great time. And I remember saying Tits Tiziana, and people giggled on the bus thinking her name was Tits. So when I stood by her, we're in Florence, and I said to what behind her, 3, 2, quite count down to her, ciao, Tiziana. And the whole group goes, ciao, Tits. And I'm like, oh, shit. Whoops, a daisy. So no, she looked at me and so it was a bit awkward, but show went on. Things went well.
I remember Florence being a lot of fun. So I think that it was a good time. No, she was just among a couple of the locals that you linked up with. I'm trying to think.
There was a bunch. It might have been Sabina. Actually, I had her on a podcast episode before when we went to Ljubljana.
Oh, no way. I didn't
possibly.
know that.
Yeah. A few episodes back. You talked all about Slovenia, and I crapped on for about 10 minutes about eating horse burgers. I went a bit of a tangent. Yeah, but you're right.
Can I just tell you? Okay, so we were in what was the southernmost? It wasn't Berlin, it was
in the south, probably Italy, Munich. Greece, Munich. Yeah.
I think we had just come into Munich. Or it was either that or Budapest. I'm trying to remember which city, but this is hilarious. You asked me something that stood out to me about the trip. Now, I'm not a huge, like, by virtue of a number of reasons, but mostly because of my career, I could never, as much as I love McDonald's, like, I can't eat it unless it's like a cheat day, right? But there was nothing else for us to eat, and we didn't go, we were just tired. We didn't go into, there was a train you could take into one part of the tour that night, and I was like, dude, we got an early morning. Let's just get some rest. But I was starving. The only thing around was a McDonald's. Bro, it is the only place on the planet where the picture on the menu looked like what they serve you, and the taste is the best. I was like, what is this? And like, it can't be McDonald's because it's good. Like, it was the fries were crisp, nothing was cold. It was probably the best burger I've ever had in my life. And I was like, dude, I'm doing McDonald's from now on. I get home, I have a McDonald's burger. I'm like, what is this? This is garbage. This is terrible. But that was hilarious to me. The Eastern Europeans, and then people were like, hey, what was the best food you had? I was like, you're not gonna believe this, but Switzerland had probably the best food and pizza I've ever had in my life because they're just so specific about everything.
Yeah. They're excellent quality. We got less than 2 minutes to go. I know that you're pressured for time and I got a bunch of things, but did you want to continue the podcast? Did you want to wrap it up? You got a choice.
I'm going to leave that up to you, man. I know you got I want to make sure I've addressed all your questions.
I don't know. You have? Yeah, I don't know. We're just talking.
I just feel like it's in good taste, man, because I know it took us so long to do this. I could talk, Benny, I could talk to you forever. I'm glad we finally got a chance.
Well, I'll tell you what. I'll tell you what. As we were talking about before, I have prided myself on this podcast about just adding like $0 into this podcast. It's just I've been keeping this going on just like no dollars. And for those who's listening, yes, this is on Zoom on the unsubscribed free version where it caps out in 40 minutes. It goes, it stops. And I've got a timer saying 1 minute and 3 seconds to go. So we could wrap it up. But I remember you spoke about Alexa and you sounded like a British accent. So as an actor, can you do an Australian accent to wrap up the podcast?
Do you want the Australian or you want the British one?
Australian. Can you do Australian?
I was telling you, I said, being around Brits for weeks on end it was easy to copy their accent because I feel like the diphthong then goes up. But when you're Australian, it's a little harder and the other goes down. I used to do Steve Irwin. It's like, crikey me arm. I'm happy that a dingo in its mummy's pouch.
That was not bad.
As close as I could get.
Well,
At some point, if you're
this podcast is going to explode any second now. Presto, thank you for nailing it. Thank you for your time and energy. And we got to do this again. We got to do this again. This won't be our first. We will continue this podcast. You made it to the end of the podcast. All right. You know the drill. Give us a like, subscribe, or leave some juicy comments. And thank you so much for listening to Get Lost with the Travel Guide, where we talk all things travel, tourism, and adventure. See you next time.